Well, after our announcement, things are going gangbusters. I mean, this is our plan to modernise the grid, create jobs, drive investment into New South Wales, $58 billion worth of investment by the 2040s, and also deliver some of the cheapest energy anywhere in the world. So this is a game changer for energy and for industry policy in New South Wales.
What I find interesting as well, and this is unusual in a federal context, is you've got bipartisan support and you've got the support of your National Party colleagues. They haven't always been on the same page as you.
Well, they support more jobs in the regions. We're going to create 6,300 new jobs in the regions to build the infrastructure that we're talking about. We're going to create 2,800 ongoing jobs, but the majority of that will be in the regions. The Nationals support cheaper, reliable energy into New South Wales. I mean, that will deliver a manufacturing renaissance for our state. So we've designed this policy to deliver cheaper energy. We've designed it to create jobs, and we've designed it to drive investment into the state. And the major beneficiary of that will be rural and regional communities. That's why the Nats are on board, and that's exactly the type of policy that gets great outcomes for the state.
One of the criticisms that's often levelled at renewables is that essentially the argument has been in the past that subsidies have been needed, it will drive up prices. But your argument is, far from driving up prices, it will reduce power prices.
Well, 10 years ago, renewables weren't the cheapest way to deliver electricity. Today, the cost of renewables is so low that it's undercutting the economics of other forms of generation. That's why, but you can't just have renewable energy, you've got to have reliable energy. And renewables working with things like pumped hydro can deliver you very, very low cost electricity. You need the pumped hydro to keep the lights on when it's still and dark, but when there's an abundance of energy, like in the middle of the day, for example, at the moment, Kieran, the pumped hydro can pump the water up the hill using that abundance of energy. In fact, I was speaking to Snowy Hydro the other day, who told me they were being paid in the middle of the day last week to actually pump water up the hill by the generators, but being paid $150 a megawatt hour to pump. So this is why the economics have changed, and I think this is why the debate's changing. Our focus has been on delivering cheap, reliable energy to the businesses and families of New South Wales. It's an economic case that we've made, and that's why I think it's got support from not only the National Party but also the Labor Party.
And just on the stability of the supply, can you reassure viewers that, yes, indeed, it is dispatchable, that you've got the capacity to provide the energy when it's needed, when the sun isn't shining or the wind not blowing?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not just about renewable energy, it's also about reliable energy. And that's why we're proposing to build another 2,000 megawatts of long-duration storage to make sure those weather-dependent renewables are backed up when we need it. It's also why we'll be having firming in the system. Things like gas are able to proceed under my plan. This is not about ideology. This is not about one form of generation over another. This is about delivering the cheapest form of reliable energy to the people of New South Wales, and that's exactly what our roadmap sets out to do.
And it's also during a period where 4 of the state's 5 coal-fired generators are going to be retired, so you need to replace that capacity. That's the bottom line here, I guess. And when you're talking about assets with life cycles of 4, 5, 6 decades, they're just not stacking up. Is that your view in terms of coal into the future?
That's exactly right. I mean, the New South Wales government built the majority of our energy infrastructure over the last 40 years. We need to replace that in 15 years using the private sector. So that's why we need to have the right regulatory settings and the right market signals to encourage the private sector to invest in the new generation, the new storage, the new firming and the new transmission to ensure that New South Wales gets the lowest cost energy anywhere in the world.
Now, we've seen the election of Joe Biden, President-elect Joe Biden. He is going to commit to net zero emissions by 2050, sign up to, or re-sign back up to Paris, the Paris Agreement. You've got Boris Johnson, the Conservative, the Tory leader in the UK, pushing nations to commit to net zero by 2050. You already have at a state level, in fact, every state and territory has. Do you think it's inevitable that the federal government will get there on that commitment?
Look, let's get the facts on the table. It's not just a Biden presidency or a Boris Johnson prime ministership. Japan last week said that they were going to hit net zero emissions by 2050. South Korea also said they'd hit net zero emissions. China has signed up to hit net zero emissions as well by mid this century. The reality is that 70% of our two-way trade is now with countries that are committed to achieving net zero emissions. So those markets are going to start wanting different types of goods and services lower in their carbon intensity. No country in the world is better placed to provide those goods and services than Australia. So I'm not saying let's close coal mines, let's shut down the mining industry. I'm saying let's also grab these other opportunities that are emerging that will set us up to be not only an energy superpower, but an economic superpower.
So do you think it is inevitable that the federal government will get there, not just in terms of the economic merit of the argument, but the pressure from elsewhere?
I don't think we have a choice. I mean, our prosperity for generations has been underwritten by our ability to sell our goods and services into those international markets. Those international markets are changing the types of goods and services they'll want from Australia, and we're very well placed to provide them. So I'm saying let's get on with it. Let's not ignore our existing industries, but let's build on them by creating new industries and taking advantage of the opportunities that are emerging.